This seat is taken, sweetheart. You'll need to find yours back in economy.
This seat is taken, sweetheart. You'll need to find yours back in economy. The entire first-class cabin turned to watch as the woman settled deeper into 2A, pulling out her phone like the conversation was already over. Vanessa didn't raise her voice or pull out her business card. She just stood there holding her boarding pass, deciding in real time whether this battle was worth the energy she'd already spent on 3 board meetings this week. The woman, mid-50s, blonde, expensive athleisure, was already waving for a flight attendant with the confidence of someone who'd never been questioned in her life. What she didn't know was that Vanessa Mitchell had just been profiled in Forbes as one of the 50 most powerful women in technology, and she was very, very familiar with how to document discrimination. Let me take you back 6 hours. Vanessa had been in San Francisco for the TechNow conference, where she delivered the opening keynote to 5,000 people about artificial intelligence ethics and the future of inclusive technology. Her company, Catalyst Systems, had gone public 18 months ago. She was now worth $1.2 billion on paper, employed 3,000 people across 12 countries, and had been named CEO of the Year by 3 major business publications. None of which meant anything to TSA, who'd randomly selected her for additional screening. Or to the barista at the airport coffee shop, who'd asked if she was sure she could afford the $8 latte. Or, apparently, to the woman currently sitting in her assigned seat. Vanessa had dressed for comfort: black joggers, a soft gray hoodie, white sneakers, her locks pulled back in a low ponytail. She'd removed her jewelry after the keynote, traded her heels for something she could sleep in on the red-eye back to New York. She looked like a regular passenger, which technically she was. But she'd paid for seat 2A first class, aisle, specifically chosen because she had a 9 a.m. meeting at headquarters and needed to work during the flight. And now someone else was sitting in it. The flight attendant appeared, young, early 20s, with the practiced smile of someone working their first year in the industry. Her name tag read Bethany. "Is there a problem?" Vanessa held up her boarding pass. "Yes, I'm assigned to 2A, but this passenger is in my seat." The woman in the seat, who Vanessa would later learn was named Carol Winters, didn't even look up from her phone. "I'm in 2A. I've been sitting here for 10 minutes. She must have made a mistake." Bethany looked at Vanessa's boarding pass, then at Carol, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am," she said to Vanessa, "are you sure this is your seat?" Vanessa felt the familiar weight of the question. Not "is this seat occupied?" Not "let me check the manifest." But "are you sure?" with the unspoken implication that she'd probably made an error. "I'm certain," Vanessa said calmly. "This is my boarding pass, seat 2A first class." Bethany looked uncertain. "Let me check the system." She pulled out her tablet and scrolled, frowned. "The system shows there might be a duplicate assignment. Let me get my supervisor." Carol finally looked up. "I have seat 2A. I booked it months ago. I don't know what her situation is, but I'm not moving." "I'm not asking you to move yet," Bethany said, already walking away. "Just give me one moment." Vanessa stood in the aisle, very aware of the other first-class passengers watching. A businessman across the aisle studiously avoided eye contact. An older couple, too, rose back, whispered to each other. A woman in 3B was clearly recording on her phone. This is where things shifted. The supervisor arrived, a man in his 40s with thinning hair and the tired expression of someone who dealt with difficult passengers all day. His name tag read Derek Chen, lead flight attendant.
What's the situation?
Both passengers are claiming seat
Bethany
2A. The
explained
system shows
quickly. Both passengers are claiming seat 2A. The system shows a confirmed assignment for both. Derek looked at Vanessa's boarding pass, then at Carol, who was now holding up her own. "I have 2A," Carol said firmly. I paid for first class. I don't know what this is about, but I'm not giving up my seat. Derek examined both boarding passes on his tablet. Okay, we definitely have a system error. It looks like the seat was double booked, which shouldn't happen but occasionally does. He looked at Vanessa. I apologize for the confusion, ma'am. We'll get you sorted into another seat. I'd like to keep my assigned seat, Vanessa said. I understand, but since this passenger is already seated, we'll need to accommodate you elsewhere. Why does being seated first give her priority over my confirmed reservation? Derek's expression tightened slightly. We generally don't ask passengers to move once they're settled. It's policy. Is it written policy, or is it your discretion? Ma'am, I'm trying to help you. I'm not asking for help. I'm asking for my assigned seat. Carol interjected, her voice sharp. I was here first. That's how it works. Maybe next time you'll board earlier instead of causing a scene. Vanessa took a slow breath. She'd been in boardrooms with hostile investors, congressional hearings with skeptical politicians, and product launches where everything went wrong. She knew how to stay calm under pressure. I'm not causing a scene, she said evenly. I'm standing in the aisle of a plane I paid to fly on, asking to sit in the seat I was assigned. That's not unreasonable. Derek pulled out his tablet. Let me see what other seats are available. I don't want another seat. I want seat 2A. That seat is occupied by someone who doesn't have priority over my confirmed reservation. Ma'am, if you continue to delay boarding, I'll have to call the captain. Please do. Derek looked surprised, like he'd expected the threat to make her back down. Instead, Vanessa pulled out her phone and opened the camera app. I'm documenting this interaction, she said calmly. For the record, I have a confirmed first-class reservation for seat 2A I boarded at my assigned time. I found my seat occupied by another passenger. I've asked to be seated in my assigned seat, and I'm being told to accept a different seat instead. Is that accurate? Derek's face flushed. Ma'am, you cannot record. I'm in a public space. I can absolutely record. Put the phone away, or you'll be removed from this flight. For what? Documenting discrimination. The word hung in the air. Carol's face went red. Oh, here we go, playing the race card, typical. Vanessa didn't respond to that. She kept her camera steady on Derek. I'd like to speak to the captain, and I'd like your full name and employee number for my complaint. I've already told you my name. Your full name and employee number. Derek looked like he wanted to refuse, but there were too many witnesses now, too many phones out. Derek Chen, employee 47,892. Thank you. Vanessa lowered her phone but didn't turn off the recording. I'll wait for the captain. What she didn't realize yet was that 3 passengers had already tweeted about the incident. Derek disappeared toward the cockpit while Bethany stood awkwardly nearby, clearly wishing she was anywhere else. Carol was on her phone now too, typing furiously. Vanessa could guess what she was writing. Entitled woman trying to steal my seat. Flight delayed because she won't accept she made a mistake. The businessman across the aisle finally spoke up. Excuse me, but I saw the whole thing. This lady got here first. He gestured to Vanessa and showed her boarding pass. The seat was already taken. Seems like an honest system error. Thank you, Vanessa said quietly. Carol snapped, she can sit somewhere else. I'm not moving. But if her boarding pass says 2A? I don't care what it says. I'm in 2A. Possession is 9/10 of the law. The businessman frowned but didn't push further. A woman from a few rows back called out, how long is this going to take? Some of us have connections. Vanessa felt the pressure shift, from Carol's stubbornness to her own presence in the aisle becoming the problem. This was how it always worked. The person pointing out the injustice became the inconvenience. 5 minutes later, the captain emerged from the cockpit. A white man in his late 50s with silver hair and the authoritative bearing that came with 30,000 flight hours. His name tag read Captain James Morrison. I understand we have a seating dispute. Derek explained quickly, framing it as two passengers claiming the same seat, system error, both refusing to compromise. Captain Morrison looked at both boarding passes on Derek's tablet. This is definitely a system error, he said. Both reservations show as confirmed, but he looked at Vanessa since this passenger is already seated. I'm going to have to ask you to accept an alternate seat so we can complete boarding. Why? Vanessa asked calmly. Because we need to stay on schedule. That doesn't answer my question. Why does she get to keep a seat that was equally assigned to me just because she's sitting in it? Because asking her to move will delay us further. So your policy is first come, first served, regardless of what the reservation says. Captain Morrison's expression hardened. My policy is to get this aircraft off the ground safely and on time. Now we can rebook you in another first-class seat. I see 4B is available, or we can rebook you on a later flight. Your choice. I'd like to file a formal complaint about this process. You're welcome to do that after we land. Right now, I need you to make a decision. Vanessa looked at Carol, who was smirking slightly. Looked at Derek, who looked relieved that the captain was backing him up. Looked at the other passengers, most of whom just wanted this resolved so the flight could leave. And she made a decision. I'll take 4B under protest, and I'll be filing a formal complaint. That's your right, Captain Morrison said. Bethany will help you get settled. As Vanessa gathered her bag and moved to 4B, Carol muttered just loud enough to be heard. Some people just can't handle being told no. Vanessa didn't respond. She settled into 4B, a middle seat, not the aisle she'd specifically chosen, and pulled out her laptop. But instead of working, she opened her email and began composing a message to the airline's CEO. Someone she'd met at a conference 6 months ago. Someone who'd given her his personal email and said, "If you ever have feedback about our service, I want to hear it directly." She was about to take him up on that offer. But that wasn't the moment that mattered most. While the plane taxied for takeoff, Vanessa documented everything. Timestamps, names, employee numbers, exact quotes as close as she could remember. She pulled up the airline's customer service policy on their website and screenshotted the section about confirmed reservations and seat assignments. She forwarded her boarding pass confirmation to her personal email as backup. And she texted her assistant, "Need you to pull my credit card statement for the flight I'm on right now. Confirmation number attached. Need proof of purchase and seat selection." Her assistant replied immediately on it, "Everything okay? We'll explain later, just need the documentation." The flight attendants began their safety demonstration. Vanessa barely heard it. She was thinking about every other time something like this had happened, being questioned at hotel front desks, being stopped by security at conferences, being asked if she was sure she was in the right place. Usually she let it go. Because fighting every battle was exhausting. Because she had bigger things to focus on. Because the cost of being labeled difficult or angry often outweighed the satisfaction of being proven right. But this time felt different. Maybe because she'd just given a keynote about the importance of calling out bias where you see it. Maybe because she was tired of making herself smaller to accommodate other people's assumptions. Or maybe because Carol's smug expression was still burned into her memory. Whatever the reason, Vanessa wasn't letting this go. The next decision would change how this ended. 30 minutes into the flight, once they'd reached cruising altitude, Vanessa pulled up the email she'd been composing. To Michael Patterson at Northwest Aircom. Subject, formal complaint, flight in W2847, SFO to JFK. Michael, we met at the CEO Summit in Boston last March. You mentioned wanting direct feedback about passenger experiences. I'm writing to provide that feedback, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Tonight I boarded flight NW2847 from San Francisco to New York. I had a confirmed first-class reservation for seat 2A, booked 3 months ago. When I boarded, another passenger was sitting in my seat. When I asked to be seated in my assigned seat, I was told to accept a different seat instead, despite having a confirmed reservation. The flight crew's reasoning was that the other passenger was already seated, and moving her would cause delays. When I questioned this policy, I was threatened with removal from the flight. I have video documentation, witness statements, and a complete timeline of the incident. What concerns me most isn't the system error. Technical glitches happen. It's the assumption that I was the one who'd made a mistake, the immediate defensiveness when I advocated for myself, the threat of removal when I documented the interaction. I've been traveling for 20 years. I've experienced countless variations of this scenario, and I'm tired of being told to make myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating to avoid being seen as a problem. I know you take customer service seriously. I'm giving you the chance to address this before I take it public. Attached, boarding pass, video documentation, credit card statement showing purchase, screenshots of your seating policy. Best, Vanessa Mitchell, CEO Catalyst Systems. She reread it 3 times. Made sure the tone was professional, not emotional. Made sure she had all the documentation. Then she hit send. And waited. The response came 47 minutes later. Vanessa, I just watched your video. I'm horrified. I'm calling the flight right now, and I'm grounding the aircraft when it lands to conduct a full investigation. You'll be hearing from me personally within the hour. This is unacceptable. I'm sorry. Michael. Vanessa stared at her screen. She'd expected a polite acknowledgement, maybe a promise to look into it. Not this. 10 minutes later, the cockpit phone rang. Captain Morrison answered, listened, and his expression changed from confident to concerned to something that looked like alarm. He hung up and immediately unbuckled, heading back to the first-class cabin. He stopped at Vanessa's seat. Ms. Mitchell. Yes. I need to speak with you privately. Would you come with me, please? The cabin went quiet. Everyone was watching. Vanessa gathered her things and followed him to the galley at the front of the plane, where Derek and Bethany were standing nervously. Captain Morrison cleared his throat. Ms. Mitchell, I've just been contacted by our CEO. He's informed me of your credentials, and he's asked me to personally apologize for how this situation was handled. Vanessa waited. We should have resolved the seating conflict differently. We should have verified the system error and followed our written policy about duplicate reservations. And we absolutely should not have threatened you with removal for documenting the incident. Okay. Mr. Patterson has asked me to offer you seat 1A, our only open first-class seat, and to personally ensure the remainder of your flight is comfortable. And the passenger in 2A. Captain Morrison hesitated. That's being addressed. How? Mr. Patterson has asked to speak with her personally upon landing. Derek looked like he might be sick. Vanessa considered the offer. I'll accept 1A, but I still want a full investigation into what happened. This isn't about getting upgraded. It's about making sure your crew understands your policies and applies them equitably. Mr. Patterson assured me that's exactly what will happen. Good. Captain Morrison gestured toward 1A, please. And again, my sincere apologies. As Vanessa moved her things to 1A, A window seat in the front row with significantly more space. She passed Carol, who was no longer smirking, who in fact looked confused and slightly worried. Vanessa didn't say anything. She just settled into her new seat, pulled out her laptop, and went back to work. What happened next wasn't loud, but it was decisive. The flight landed at JFK 3 hours later. As they taxied to the gate, Captain Morrison's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to remain at the gate briefly after landing for an operational matter. We apologize for any inconvenience. Flight attendants, please remain at your stations." Confused murmuring rippled through the cabin. When the plane stopped at the gate, 3 people boarded before any passengers could deplane. Michael Patterson, the airline CEO. A woman, Vanessa, recognized as the VP of Customer Experience. And 2 airport security officers. Michael spotted Vanessa immediately and approached. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for your patience. Would you mind remaining on board for a few minutes while we address this situation?" "Of course." He nodded and moved to seat 2A, where Carol was still sitting, now looking genuinely nervous. "Ms. Winters." "Yes." "I'm Michael Patterson, CEO of Northwest Airlines. I need to speak with you about an incident that occurred during boarding." Carol's face went pale. "I don't know what she told you, but I was in my assigned seat." "Ma'am, I've reviewed the boarding records. You were assigned to seat 12B in economy. You boarded early during our premium customer boarding and sat in a first-class seat that wasn't assigned to you." The cabin went dead silent. "That's not, I was told 2A. Michael pulled out a tablet. "Your boarding pass clearly shows 12B. You can see it here." He turned the screen toward her. Carol looked at it, and her expression crumbled. I must have made a mistake, I thought." "You thought you could sit in first class and no one would notice. When the actual ticketed passenger arrived, instead of acknowledging your error, you insisted you were correct and allowed the flight crew to remove her from her paid seat." "I didn't mean." "You also made a comment about playing the race card when Ms. Mitchell documented the interaction. Would you like to explain that?" Carol looked around desperately. "I was just frustrated. You're being removed from this aircraft and placed on our no-fly list pending further review. You'll also be receiving a bill for the difference between your economy ticket and the first-class seat you occupied." "You can't do that." "I absolutely can. You violated our terms of service. You interfered with the seating of a confirmed passenger, and you made discriminatory comments that were witnessed by multiple passengers." He nodded to the security officers, who stepped forward. "Ma'am, please gather your belongings and come with us. This is insane. I made an honest mistake." "An honest mistake would have been realized when you saw seat 2A on Ms. Mitchell's boarding pass. Instead, you doubled down and allowed her to be displaced. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Carol was escorted off the plane, protesting the entire way. The remaining passengers sat in stunned silence. Michael turned to the cabin. "I apologize for the delay. We take seating assignments and passenger treatment very seriously. Thank you for your patience." Then he approached Vanessa. "May I speak with you privately?" Michael led Vanessa to the jetway, where it was quieter. "First, my sincere apologies. What happened tonight was completely unacceptable." "Thank you." "Second, I want you to know we're conducting a full review of how our crew handled this. Captain Morrison and Derek Chen will both be undergoing additional training. Bethany is new and was following her supervisor's lead, so her situation will be handled differently." "What kind of training?" "De-escalation, anti-bias, our actual policies around seating disputes, which they clearly didn't follow tonight." Vanessa nodded slowly. "And what about the systemic issue?" "What do you mean?" I mean that Carol was able to sit in first class for 30 minutes without anyone questioning her. I showed up with a confirmed reservation and was immediately doubted. Why? Michael was quiet for a moment. You know why? I do, but I want to hear you say it. Because she's white and you're black, and our crew made assumptions based on that. Yes, they did. And that's not acceptable, which is why we're going to be reviewing our training protocols across all customer-facing staff. This can't keep happening. It happens every day, Vanessa said quietly. To passengers who don't have a direct line to the CEO, to people who can't risk making a scene because they need to get to a job interview or a family emergency or a medical appointment. What happens to them? Michael didn't have a good answer. I'm asking, Vanessa continued, because this isn't about me. I'm fine, I'll be fine. But I'm in a position to demand accountability. Most passengers aren't. You're right, and I don't have a perfect solution, but I'm committed to doing better. Then do better, not just with me, systemically. I will, and I'd like your help. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. My help? You run a tech company focused on ethical AI and inclusive systems. We're trying to overhaul our customer service approach. Would you be willing to consult? Not for free. This would be a paid engagement. Help us identify where our processes fail passengers like you and build better systems. Vanessa hadn't expected that. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. He handed her a business card. My direct line, call me when you're ready. The story broke the next morning. Not because Vanessa released the video, she hadn't, but because other passengers had. Black tech CEO forced from her seat, while white woman who stole it stays. Northwest Airlines CEO grounds flight to remove passenger who took wrong seat. Vanessa Mitchell, incident highlights ongoing bias in air travel. Within hours, it was everywhere. The video had been viewed 8 million times. The airline stock dropped 3%. And Vanessa's phone was ringing off the hook, media requests, speaking invitations, messages of support from people who'd experienced similar treatment. She declined almost all of it. She didn't want to be the face of airline discrimination. She wanted to get back to running her company. But she also knew she had a responsibility. To the people who'd messaged her saying, "This happens to me every time I fly." To the black professionals who'd thanked her for not backing down. To the young women who'd written, "You showed me it's okay to take up space." So she made a statement. Brief, direct, focused not on her experience but on the larger issue. What happened to me on flight NW2847 was not unique. It's part of a pattern of assumptions about who belongs in premium spaces. I'm grateful Northwest Airlines is taking accountability, but real change requires more than apologizing to one passenger. It requires examining the biases embedded in how we treat people who don't fit expected profiles. I hope this incident sparks that examination, not just at Northwest, but across the industry. She posted it on her company's social media and didn't elaborate further. But the conversation continued without her. This is where things shifted. 2 weeks later, Vanessa received a detailed report from Northwest Airlines. It outlined everything they'd found. Derek Chen had a pattern of escalating situations with passengers of color rather than de-escalating. 3 formal complaints in 18 months, all involving black or brown passengers being threatened with removal. Captain Morrison had followed protocol by supporting his lead flight attendant, but he'd failed to verify the facts independently before making his decision. Bethany had done nothing wrong. She tried to resolve it correctly, but had been overruled by her supervisor. Carol Winters had indeed been assigned to 12B when questioned. She'd admitted she just wanted to see what first class was like and thought no one would notice. The report concluded with action items. Derek was being reassigned to ground operations, and required to complete bias training before any return to flight duty. Captain Morrison was undergoing additional training on passenger rights and conflict resolution. Bethany was commended for her initial instincts and given a pay increase. Carol was permanently banned from Northwest Airlines. And the part that surprised Vanessa, the airline was implementing new protocols. Mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff, updated quarterly. A passenger advocacy hotline for reporting discriminatory treatment. Data tracking on whose reservations get questioned, who gets removed from flights, who gets upgraded. Broken down by race, gender, age. A commitment to publish that data annually. Vanessa read through it all carefully. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than she'd expected. When Michael called to discuss it, she told him so. "I'm impressed. Most companies would have issued an apology and called it done. Most companies don't have a passenger with a direct line to the CEO," Michael said wryly. "But you're right, we should be doing this regardless. You just gave us the push we needed." "So what happens now?" "Now we implement, and I'd still like you to consult on the data tracking piece, making sure we're measuring the right things." Vanessa thought about it. She didn't need the money, and she didn't need to add another commitment to her schedule. But she thought about all the passengers who'd never get this kind of resolution, who'd be told to just accept it and move on. "I'll do it," she said, "but I want to be involved in the training development too, not just the data." "Done. When can you start?" Over the next 6 months, Vanessa worked with Northwest Airlines to overhaul their approach to passenger conflicts. She brought in experts on implicit bias. She designed scenarios for training that reflected real situations, like hers. She pushed them to examine their policies through the lens of equity, not just efficiency. And she insisted on transparency. When the first quarterly report came out, it showed exactly what she'd suspected. Black passengers were 340% more likely to have their reservations questioned. Latino passengers were 280% more likely. Asian passengers were 160% more likely. Women traveling alone were flagged for verification at twice the rate of men. Passengers in first class with ethnic-sounding names were stopped by flight attendants at 3 times the rate of passengers with conventionally white names. The data was damning, but it was also the first step toward accountability. Northwest published it with a statement acknowledging the disparities and committing to reduce them by 50% within a year. The industry noticed. Other airlines started asking Northwest about their methodology. The Department of Transportation opened an inquiry into industry-wide practices. And Vanessa received letters from passengers. "I flew Northwest last week. I had my reservation questioned again, but this time the supervisor apologized and corrected the agent immediately. Someone had clearly been trained differently. Thank you. I'm a flight attendant at a different airline. We just got new training based on the protocols Northwest developed. It's the first time anyone's explicitly addressed racial bias in our work. It's overdue, but it's happening. My daughter wants to be a pilot. She's black. She was discouraged by everyone, teachers, counselors, even family. But she saw your story and decided to pursue it anyway. Thank you for showing her that speaking up matters." Vanessa kept every letter. On the hard days when the work felt slow, when resistance felt overwhelming, she read them. And remembered why this mattered. 1 year after the incident, Vanessa boarded a Northwest Airlines flight from New York to San Francisco. Same route, same airline, different experience. She'd booked first class again, seat 3A this time. When she approached the gate, the agent greeted her with a warm smile. "Ms. Mitchell, welcome aboard. Your seat is ready, and we're honored to have you flying with us today." No suspicion, No extra questions, just professional service. She boarded and found her seat empty, as it should be. The lead flight attendant, a black woman in her 40s, stopped by. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Diane. I just wanted to introduce myself and thank you." "Thank you for what?" "For what you did last year. I've been flying for 15 years, and I've seen passengers treated the way you were more times than I can count. But you didn't just complain, you changed the system. The training we've received since then has been transformative." "I'm glad it's helping." "It is, and it's not just training, it's permission. Permission to speak up when we see bias. Permission to correct supervisors who are wrong. Permission to prioritize passenger dignity over avoiding conflict." Diane paused. "So thank you. You made my job better, and you made flying safer for passengers who look like me." After she left, Vanessa sat quietly, feeling the weight of that gratitude. She'd never wanted to be a symbol. But perhaps that's exactly what the moment had required. 6 months later, Vanessa was invited to speak at the National Association of Black Business Professionals Conference. The topic, "When Standing Your Ground Changes the System." She stood in front of 3,000 people and told the story of Flight NW2847. Not as a victim narrative, but as a case study in strategic advocacy. "I want to be clear about something," she said. "I didn't set out to change airline policy. I just wanted to sit in the seat I'd paid for. But when I was told to accept a different seat, to make myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating, I had to make a choice. I could let it go, move on, avoid being labeled difficult. Or I could document what happened, use the access I had, demand accountability. I chose the second path, not because I'm brave, but because I was tired." She paused. "Tired of being questioned in spaces I'd earned the right to occupy. Tired of watching other people receive the benefit of the doubt while I had to prove myself. Tired of the assumption that if there's a conflict, I must be the one who's wrong. So I documented. I emailed someone with power. I made it impossible to ignore. And yes, I had advantages. I knew the CEO. I had resources. I had a platform. But the lesson isn't that you need to be a CEO to demand dignity. It's that you deserve dignity regardless of your title." She looked out at the audience. "Some of you will face moments like mine. Moments where someone tries to make you small, tries to tell you that you don't belong. In those moments you have choices, and whatever you choose is valid. But if you choose to fight back, document everything. Know your rights. Use whatever access you have, and don't apologize for taking up space you've earned." The applause was long and loud. But the moment Vanessa treasured most came afterward. A young woman, maybe 25, nervous energy, approached her. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Jasmine. I work in marketing. Last month I was at a conference and someone assumed I was catering staff. When I corrected them, they asked to see my badge, like I was lying. I'm sorry that happened." "It's okay." "Well, it's not okay. But what I wanted to say is I thought about your story, and instead of just walking away embarrassed, I documented it, reported it to the conference organizers, and they apologized and updated their policies." Jasmine's eyes filled. "It felt small compared to what you did, but it mattered to me." Vanessa pulled her into a hug. "It's not small. Every time we refuse to accept being diminished, we make space for the next person. That's how systems change, one person at a time." 3 years after Flight NW2847, the airline industry had changed. Not completely, not everywhere, but measurably. Northwest's data showed the disparities in reservation questioning had dropped by 68%. Passenger complaints about discriminatory treatment were down 73%. And 5 other major airlines had adopted similar transparency and training protocols. The Department of Transportation had issued new guidelines requiring airlines to track and report demographic data on passenger conflicts. Flight attendant unions had incorporated anti-bias training into their standard curricula. And passengers, especially passengers of color, reported feeling safer, more respected, more believed. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. And Vanessa received a letter that made her cry. It was from Derek Chen, the flight attendant who'd threatened to remove her. Ms. Mitchell, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I wanted you to know that I've spent the last 3 years in therapy and bias training, trying to understand how I became someone who could treat you the way I did. I was wrong, not just about the policy, though I was wrong about that too, but about the assumptions I made when I saw you, about who I believed and who I doubted, about who I gave the benefit of the doubt. I'm not flying anymore. I'm working in operations, but I also volunteer teaching bias awareness to new airline employees. I tell them my story, what I did to you, how wrong I was, what it cost me. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your refusal to accept my behavior changed me, made me confront things about myself I didn't want to see. I'm trying to be better because of you. Derek. Vanessa read it 3 times. She didn't respond, but she kept the letter. Because transformation, real transformation, was rare and precious. And maybe the system was working after all. 5 years after the incident, Vanessa was invited back to Northwest Airlines. Not as a consultant, not as a passenger. As a board member. We want someone with your perspective in governance, Michael Patterson said. Someone who understands both the business side and the human side. Someone who won't let us get complacent. Vanessa considered. She'd never planned to be in the airline industry. But she'd also never planned to become a symbol of standing up to bias. Life rarely went according to plan. I'll do it, she said, but I want the authority to push for real change, not just window dressing. You'll have it. At her first board meeting, she proposed an ambitious goal. Eliminate measurable disparities in how passengers are treated within 5 years. Track everything, publish everything, hold everyone accountable. Some board members pushed back. That's setting ourselves up for criticism. Good, Vanessa said. Criticism means we're being transparent, and transparency drives improvement. But what if the data looks bad? Then we fix what's broken instead of hiding it. The proposal passed, and Northwest became the first airline to commit to full transparency in passenger treatment metrics. Other airlines followed, not because they wanted to, but because passengers started demanding it, and investors started paying attention. 10 years after Flight NW2847, Vanessa received an invitation to speak at a flight attendant training graduation. She almost declined. She'd moved on from the incident, built her company to even greater heights, served on multiple boards. But something made her say yes. She stood in front of 200 newly trained flight attendants and told them the story one more time. When I boarded that flight 10 years ago, I didn't know it would change my life. I just wanted to get home. But what happened that night taught me something important. Systems don't change because people are nice. They change because people demand better. You're entering an industry that's improved dramatically in the last decade, but it's not perfect. You'll still see bias. You'll still see passengers treated unfairly. And in those moments, you'll have a choice. You can look away, mind your business, avoid conflict. Or you can speak up, correct your colleagues, protect your passengers. She paused. I'm asking you to choose the second path, not because it's easy, it's not, but because you have power, the power to make someone's travel experience dignified instead of degrading, the power to interrupt bias instead of enabling it. Use that power, please. After the ceremony, a young black woman in a flight attendant uniform approached. Ms. Mitchell, I'm Sierra, I just graduated, and I wanted you to know I'm going into this job because of you. Because of me. Because you showed me that speaking up matters. That one person refusing to accept unfair treatment can change an entire industry. Sierra's voice shook slightly. I'm terrified of messing up, of being the only black woman on my crew, of facing the same assumptions you did. You will face them, Vanessa said gently. I won't lie and say you won't, but you'll also have tools I didn't have, training, policies, a culture that's at least trying to do better. What if it's not enough? Then you document, you report, you advocate just like I did, and you know what? What? You won't be alone, because there are hundreds of people who have been inspired by this story to speak up too. You're part of something bigger now. Sierra hugged her, crying, Thank you for not backing down. Thank you for carrying it forward. Vanessa Mitchell didn't raise her voice on flight NW2847. She didn't make a scene. She didn't fight Carol for the seat or berate Derek for his assumptions. She just stood in an airplane aisle and refused to accept being made small. She documented what happened. She used the access she had. She demanded accountability from people with power. And in doing so, she didn't just get her seat back. She changed how an industry treated millions of passengers who didn't look like what people expected. That passenger who took her seat thought she'd won. Thought she'd gotten away with something. Thought Vanessa would just quietly move and let it go. She didn't know she was sitting in the seat of someone who'd built a billion-dollar company by refusing to accept no when she knew she was right. She didn't know that one email would ground that flight. She didn't know that her 15 minutes in first class would cost her the ability to ever fly that airline again. She didn't know that Vanessa Mitchell had the patience to fight the long game. The kind of fight that doesn't end with someone getting fired. It ends with systems getting fixed. The CEO's seat was taken, but she didn't just take it back. She made sure no one could take it from anyone else again. That's not revenge. That's legacy. Quiet, strategic, transformative. The kind that doesn't need applause. Because the work speaks for itself. Dignity doesn't require proving yourself to people who have already decided not to see you. It requires knowing your worth. Documenting the truth. Using whatever access you have. And refusing to make yourself smaller just to make others comfortable. She didn't shout her way to justice. She documented her way there. And in doing so, she built something that lasted far beyond one flight. That's power. Not loud, not performative. Just patient, strategic, and utterly unshakable. And it changed everything.